Excel Online. Want to interact with it through code? Then stick around today as we explore Excel in SharePoint through PowerShell using Graph API. This whole process that we'll go through today, it's going to be designed to showcase how we can find Excel APIs and use them. We won't cover everything that is in Excel Online because it is an endless pit, but here's what we'll do. We'll go back to some lessons from the SharePoint episode so we can navigate to our files and folders, as well as how to create new Excel files. And I don't mean upload them to SharePoint. No, I mean create them from scratch in SharePoint, which is possible. And then with that, we'll explore how to read the data that is inside the Excel document, like the tables, and get it returned to us as an object. Beyond that, we'll learn how to format the data into tables, change its fonts, auto-fit the columns and rows so everything is nicely packed automatically, and then most importantly, how to add stuff to it using the APIs as well. Whether it's creating the whole table in one go, or adding single or multiple rows being appended to an existing file. And this is just enough for you to see how it works to do the following. How to generate, say, like a report of some kind that others may be interested in as an Excel file. Maybe you want to track data, so we have some kind of a log file that we append new data to. Kind of like our own version of auditing and tracking changes of things as they occur, which we'll dive deeper into in the future when we start exploring log analytics. So we'll touch this again in the future. And then finally, being able to read existing Excel documents ingested by our automations to do stuff kind of thing, right? So we'll have that as an option too. And thus, by the end of it, you will understand Excel Online enough so that if you want to explore other things on your own about it, you can as well. Like making charts, doing formulas, formatting in all the ways that I won't mention, and maybe on existing files you want to not modify whole rows, but rather a single cell in that row kind of thing, right? These are all things that are possible. I'll leave them to you to figure out with what we pick up from here today. Either way, let's get started and see all of this in action. Okay, and we're back. So before we begin, I highly advise you check out the SharePoint API episode I made, as it intertwines with the things we'll be talking about today. After all, we are interacting with Excel within SharePoint, right? So with that, let's use an app registration from that episode to access the site today as well. This is the SharePoint site at the end that we assign permissions to, and I'm going to actually use that for today's lesson. So I'm going to collect its token by running the commands here. And this is what I have, right? I've gone through this so many times that I think at this point you should know if you have followed my series. First thing is our headers. That's what we need the token for. And this header is going to be the same across the board. So I'm just going to put it at the top here and then reference this variable of the header going forward. So headers equals authorization. That's going to mention our token. And then content type set to application JSON. Just to give you a visual, this is my SharePoint site. It's called My Team Site. The folders I'm going to interact with is in my Documents Library, Automation, Demo, right here. So the first thing we want is to get our site ID. Just like I showed you in the SharePoint episode, if you don't know how to get it, we can just do an API to get it. And that's exactly what we'll do. Make a URI. All the SharePoint stuff I'm just going to power through because we've already talked about it. Anything related to Excel, I will show you how we can get its APIs. So this is the URI I will use, and all I want returned is a site ID, and we'll do that with the get method. Let's run all of this and make sure we have an ID and site ID, and we do. So this is going to be our site ID going forward. So our first task, say you wanted to create an Excel sheet. The easiest way is, of course, to just import a file right here. But let's say you don't have the means to do that. You just wanted to create it here and then put stuff inside it. So let's do that. Let's actually explore that. So just like our last episode, we have to get to the folder path of where we want to put the file, right? So we'll say create file plus get its ID. So this is our folder path. It's our directory root automation demo. And why don't we give a file name to what we want created here? And I'll say my new Excel doc, XLSI. And the URI is, now what's funny is what I'm about to show you is kind of hard to find. There's not really a doc that kind of tells you how you can create an empty file. So I kind of just played around until I found something. So this is what actually works. So our URIs are always going to start with this, and then it'll be drive to say that we're going to a drive. And then we're going to point it to our folder path right here, like so, :/children. So this is going to discuss this folder's children path. And what are we going to do inside it? In the past, we did get commands against this. This time, we're actually going to do a post. And yeah, you can just say, hey, I'm going to post a file name. File equals this. Convert to JSON, depth of 20. Like that. Like you put your file name here. I don't even need these quotes. If you do a post, it will actually create it. Pretty cool. So our method is post, and then we're making sure we're including this body. And then while it's being created, let's just do this so we can actually get his ID. Let's run this and see what happens here. Oh yeah. Variables don't like a colon after them, so inject it like this. Now let's try it. Cool, no errors. Refresh. There's our file. So this is how you can actually create an empty file. Pretty cool. And what's crazy is that this has nothing to do with Excel. Like I could just give it this name, and by having a different extension, it will create that type of file. So we could create Word files and PowerPoint files using this as well. Like I'll run this again and show you. Oh no, I overwrote my file ID. Right, there it is. Pretty cool. Okay, well now I just overwrote my file ID. So let me just get that. Okay, back to where we were. Don't need this part. Okay, now that we have a file, we can actually omit the folder path, because if you have an ID of something, you can just use that directly, right? But we got the file ID here, and well, we can make our new URI going forward going to be this, followed by something. So we omit the folder path, everything, and we just go straight to the item ID itself. So why don't we do this? When you create a new worksheet, the one thing that always gets created is actually a worksheet. Like you can't have an Excel doc without one of these, right? I can't delete it, but I can always create more. So just like how we navigate from SharePoint down to a file, we'll have to navigate down to a worksheet before we can start interacting with what's inside or make stuff inside. So to get all the worksheets, let's say we create another one called Sheet 2, right? To get the worksheets that are in Excel, with this URI, we need to start exploring what's inside, right? And it's pretty easy. You can just type get worksheet Excel online graph API. And there it is, get worksheet. Now get is going to be about a particular one, so we actually need list. List means get them all. So we scroll here and we see this. Me, drive, items, ID, workbook, worksheets. So we have up until here, right? We already got the ID. So what we really need to add is this into the HTTP request and make it a get method. So let's just copy workbook/worksheets and bring it right here. It's like that. And then let's make our response the same as this. And let's peek inside. Okay, got something back for my list. Stuff is in values. Type values. Value, sorry, was 1. And look what we get back. We get sheet 1 and sheet 2, right? Sheet 1 and sheet 2. And then they also have their own, you guessed it, IDs. Everything in SharePoint's IDs, including what's in Excel documents. Going down it, even the table's going to have an ID shortly. And generally speaking, the very first sheet you make, it has the simplest GUID, which is all these zeros with 1 at some point. But every one that precedes is always going to have something more unique. And notice how there is the curly brackets. That's actually part of the ID. So when you search for an ID, make sure you include that as well. So with that, why don't we explore a single worksheet? And let's go back to here and click get. So it's the same HTTP request, but at the end of worksheets, we're all actually providing an ID/name, which is actually a good thing because that means we can use one or the other. So what we could try is, let's say existing worksheet equals, let's do this name first, sheet 1. And then the URI is the same as this, all of it actually, with one caveat, is that at the end here, we're going to provide it its name. There's a couple ways to do it. You could do the slash route, but I prefer sometimes, you could do it right like this actually. Let's do it like this. And the reason is if you had spaces or any kind of weird formatting, right? Like if you had this with all these kind of special characters that the URI may not like, at least within here, it will kind of work. But it's the same idea. I just thought I'd show you this one. So get particular worksheet. So if let's say you wanted to get this worksheet's ID, you can do that, or you can have it stored as a variable so that when you reference stuff inside it, well, this is the worksheet you're going to be working with, right? And the same thing, like if I just had the ID and I want to know what the name is for some reason, we can also do it like this. And again, like I said, make sure you include the curly braces because they're needed. There you go. And as I mentioned, you don't have to do it like this. You could just do a slash like that. That will work as well. There you go. 2 ways to do the same thing. Okay, I'm going to delete this worksheet number 2. We don't need this. Sheet 1. Generally speaking, when you're making, let's say, a report, right? And you want to do it automatically, especially, you're going to put data in your first worksheet and then maybe some other data in your second worksheet and on and on and on. Maybe you don't want to call it sheet 1, right? Because sheet 2 may be about identities or groups or something like that. And then sheet 1 is about apps, for example. You want to call it apps, right? So how do you change its name? Let's go back here and you will see all the options that you have for worksheets. So we don't have to Google. We can just kind of like play around here. Update makes sense, right? You're changing the name. So these are the fields that you can update. And the one we're particularly looking for is name. So that's what we want to change. So let's use this. And what kind of method is it? It's a patch. Okay. And it's referencing the exact same URI that we just did to get, right? So this should be really simple to do. So we'll just copy this. Make sure we add a body. I'll just copy this right here. I'll type this again. We don't need this file part. And then we just have a new name. And just for clarity, let's just go back to sheet 1. And then let's give this a new worksheet name. We'll call it my test worksheet. Sure. And then all we do is in the body reference that, right? And finally, let's make sure it's not get, it's patch and see what happens. No. Oh yeah. Make sure you include the body. Okay, now let's see what happens. Cool. And it changed. And you can see that it actually changes in real time. Pretty cool. Now to interact with data. Why don't we make a table inside this worksheet? Before I show you how to make tables, let's work on retrieving data from tables. So let's quickly make one. We'll say, and it'll be like something simple. Name, color, size. Banana, yellow. And then size, depending on how genetically modified your local grocery store is, medium, sure. Strawberry, red, small. And then one more, watermelon, green, large. And then let's format as a table and sure, we'll make it light 10. Something I will touch later. So I'm just trying to put in your head that these all have different numbers, right? Light 13, 14, medium, dark. So these predefined tables have a particular style, right? So let's make it headers. Do that as well. Okay, here's my simple little table. Let's interact with this through here. So I'll reference my worksheet. It still has the same idea as sheet 1, right? URI. That much we know. But beyond this, what do we do? Go back here. And look at that, there's a section called tables. Let's open that. And list, and you can get. I don't know the table's name, right? Because tables apparently have names too. I didn't set that. So let's get a list of our tables. You can see there's different ways you can get this, right? List. You can get it for the whole Excel document. So give me all the tables, regardless of which worksheet it is in. Or you could do it like we're about to do, which is to get it for a particular worksheet. Up to you. And because to get, there's nothing else to it besides using that URI, and let's do that. So we have worksheet work ID. After that, it was just the word tables. And then we'll do the same response for get from before. And let's see what we get. Okay, red. And we open response. Same thing, response.value. And there is our table. It has an ID. It has a name, table 2. And then it even has styles and then other fields, but who cares? There is our table. What it doesn't show us is the values of this table. And by the way, table 2, if you select your table, you see table design. This is where the name comes in. But right now, I don't get the data. Like, I want to know about the fruits, right? This is just telling me the table's metadata. So how do we do that? Okay, so table ID, the table 2, there's the ID. And the URI, I'm going to switch around a bit. Because if you go to get, we could reference worksheet and then table, or we can reference the table directly. Now, if I just scroll down, I can just let you know, this is not going to give us the values either. This is just getting the metadata for one particular thing. So instead of wasting more time, let's just get to what we need to get to, which is beyond these metadata related stuff. You have list columns, you have list rows, you have get table range. This is the one I would suggest we use. This is what I recommend we use, range. This will give us a lot of good information about the table, but it will also give us the rows. It will give us not just the rows and the columns, but together, all of it. So we'll use range. And then let's call this values, because I'm going to export it some more. And it's just a get command. But this time I'm going to go inside it to dot values. Let me show you what happens without values first. One thing to note is if you ever need the address space of a table, A1 to C4, you can use this command to get it as well. It may not be useful right now, but it is something you may need to know to get like A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 4. So A1 is where this table starts, which is that name. And then this is obviously B1 and this is C1, right? And then it ends at C4. That's what it's telling you here, the size of the table. Now the actual values are in here. Let me just make sure it's stored as a variable so we can just work with values correctly. The values, it is stored here. It is an array. Unfortunately, it's not going to be an object, but it's not a single array. This is what you call a 2D array, as in an array of arrays. So if I do 0, you would think I would get a name, but I actually get the first set. It's just a visual thing in PowerShell where it shows you like this. But if I did convert to JSON, you can see the visual. A big array with a whole bunch of arrays, right? The first, second, third, and fourth. So if we wanted a particular item, this is how we're getting it. Values.0 pretty much means when it's a table with headers that this is the header row. And then these are all the data rows that precede it. Okay, so I have an array of arrays. How do I make this into an object? Because I would like to see it like, properties with values. All right, so convert a 2D array to an object. I've already mentioned that value zeros is columns. So let's actually do that. So columns equals an array of values.0. We're storing all the columns into an array. The columns now is, you can index through it. Now we need to do the same for rows, excluding what's in columns. That's pretty easy to do too. So if we do values dot dot 2, that's telling me array 1 all the way to array 2, give me them, right? But it could be hundreds, it could be thousands. Like we don't know what this second number is. Like we know for a fact the first number is a 1 because 0 is columns. So how do we do that? A simple way is values count is 4, right? Minus 1. So remove 0. That's it. And then we'll just put that here. So we have our rows minus the columns. Perfect. Now we just need to objectify. We need to make them into an object. Let's objectify these guys and say for each row in rows, so let's go through all of them. Make a hash table, an empty one. And we'll write stuff to, say ordered, make it empty. And then we'll do a little bit of, we'll do something we don't do often, but it exists. For I equals 0, less than columns dot count, I plus plus. For each row, Now we're going to work for each cell, and then we're going to go through each column, essentially, as a count. So we could do hash table, column I. So go through the first one, right? Column 1, column 0, column 1, column 2. And then whatever it is also going to be here because this is a 2D array. So the row's first item is going to be the column's first item and all that. PS custom object. This is what we're going to return. Hash table. So we're storing the for each into, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but if you haven't, we're basically running a for each while we have an equal sign. So whenever something outputs in here, it actually gets stored in here. And we're saying store object as a PS custom object, and the data we're sending it is the hash table. Okay, what have we done wrong here while explaining? Okay, row, and then this is an S. Yeah, just like that, no matter how big your data set is, it will be able to convert it from a 2D into an object. So now we can do all the fun stuff we like to do with PowerShell. Cool. So yeah, this is what we have to do with Excel, unlike lists that just kind of gives us the data how we want. I know it's a little annoying, but honestly, like if you're working with Excel, everything I'm showing you here, take it to function. Like use PowerShell functions and simplify this. So you don't have to type all this just to get data, right? You can just call the function and it will collect the data for you kind of thing. Like that's how I actually use them. So moving on, let's say we want to add a row to the table. So we're appending. And let's say the row we want to add, it's just another fruit. All right, so it's going to be orange, which is the color also orange. And the size is medium. So most likely this is going to be our URI. And let's go back to our site. Okay. Table row. There's a create row. There's also this one, add rows. That sounds about right. Add rows to the end of the table. Okay, perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. Table row, add. And then it's the same thing, but we're adding at the end rows and add. And it's a post, so it's going to have a body. So let's just add this and see what the body entails. So in the body, we can provide a two-dimensional array of unformatted values. Perfect. So it looks like whenever you're going to add, you also have to provide it as a two-dimensional array. So when we have objects later, we want to convert, we'll look into that. But as of right now, let's just give it what it wants because this is how you can just give it simply. You make it ordered in the sense that this is the first, second is the third, so that it shows up here as first, second, third, right? Name, color, size. And don't worry, we have PowerShell. We'll make it more intelligent later. So if you ever wanted to add, a row, something to be mindful of. It's a good way to showcase this actually. If you ever run this and do convert to JSON, let's actually see this in action. The PowerShell thing. And we go to body. Sorry, let me run that again. Now let's run this without the word body so I can just see it in action. Now look what happens. Values, an array, right? And this array has 3 items. Is that what we want? We don't. We want a 2D array. So the values equals array within an array. Now I did that, didn't I? So, okay, so do I just do this? How do we get, like, is that how we'll get the second one? No. Huh. Weird, right? So how do we get an array to be an item in an array? It's one of those things that's kind of annoying, but well, once you know it, you know it. You just put a comma before it. So now if I run it, you can see, right? Whereas without it, right, it's missing the second array. Like if I wanted to, for example, do row, it's just going to make it one big one. But if I do row, it will make it individual array items with it. It'll make it like how we want it, which is an array within an array. Okay, so just be mindful of that. If you're ever interacting with rows within rows, PowerShell is going to just make it into a single row. It's going to make it into a single array. You'll have to add a comma to make it an array of an array. Okay, moving on. Let's go back to work. So it's a post, and we're including a body. I won't forget it this time. And let's run that and see what happens. Hopefully I'm quicker than it. Okay, I am, yes. And look, it got added. Perfect. So that's how you can append data, right? I can just keep running it, and I'll just keep adding it. Now let's make tables. Let's make a table. Not only that, let's make it proper. Enough of these fruits. Let's talk about some real Azure stuff. Why don't we make a worksheet with the new table with its own columns and rows via APIs instead? And let's start with making the worksheet. So I will say new worksheet name. Sure. We'll call it resources because this is. So this will make us a new worksheet in the same file. Worksheet/add with a post, and then we're just giving it the name. Cool. It got added. Next, let's make our object first that we're going to want to put into Excel. So I'm just going to go to set AZ context into my other subscription. And I'm doing something very simple. Maybe easier to see if I do this. I'm just doing a get AZ resource, right? And I'm getting a whole bunch of properties. And then I'm just doing one special one, which is I'm also getting the name of the subscription that I'm in case I want to loop through many, I would like to have that as well. Okay. Simple enough so that if we run this, we get as a return all these fields that I want to put into Excel. One thing to note about Excel is don't pass in objects, don't pass in arrays. You can't just put an array in here. You can't just put an object data type in here. You'll have to put strings, integers, bool, and I think that's probably all that can go in. Maybe more. I haven't tried the rest. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing here, but we're going to do it in reverse. So this was taking a 2D array and making it into an object. Now we're going to take an object and make it into a 2D array so we can push it in. So how do we do this? Is the first row is going to be the columns, right? And I want to separate them out for a reason. In objects, if you wanted to get the properties, you can do 0, select the first one, PS custom object property name. And it gives it to you in the order. Like if you do get member, you're not going to get it in the order. Like as you can see here, if you try to use get member to get the properties, it's not going to be in the order that you may have wanted where you're doing a select object here. So this is how you can get in that. There's the rows. I'm going to make a generic list object type, an empty one that I'm going to put everything into. The very first thing I'm going to put into it is our columns. So rows list dot add. This is how you add stuff to it, right? I'm going to add it as an array. Just to confirm, just to let you know, this may say an object, but it's going to be an array of arrays. So if I run these, go to rows list, get array, but it's in 1, right? So it's 2D, like that. Now in that array list, we're going to add all of our rows. So for each item in object, right here, row equals for each column in columns. Item dot column. So look what I'm doing here. I'm making sure that we're going to go through all the columns and we're going to add whatever's in that column here. It's a bit more programmatic than, writing it like this kind of thing. And we'll do that for append later as well. And then rows list add. What are we adding? We're adding a row that is an array. So whatever we collect here, we've added to here. Okay. So if I run all of this and look at rows list, oh, there's such thing as dot column. It's actually $ column. So I'm actually referencing this variable as this dot. Okay, go ahead. Rows list. There, perfect. So if I do 0, we get our column headers. We do 1, that's one set, right? If I do 1, 1, that's one item. You get the picture. But we're not done yet. Call earlier, I mentioned here, you have a range of a table, right? So it's A1 that ends with C7 for this one. We need to have that as data to add as well. So we kind of need to make that logic as well. This is where it gets a little confusing, but just I'll try my best to explain as I go. So like, for example, if you look at rows list and go to 0, we can see it's going to be A, B, C, D, and E, right? It's going to have 5 columns. First one is going to be A1, obviously. But then E, last one, is going to be how many different rows we had. So if we do count, 24. So it's most likely going to be E24. But we need to basically give it A1 colon E24. Then it will put the data that we give it on those ranges. Now, why would they want that? Well, what if you had a table already existing from A1 to C7, right? What if you wanted to create another table from here to here? Well, then you're not going to use A1 as your starting point. You're going to use A10 as your starting point, and then you're going to end it at whatever, E30 something, right? That's why it's there, but it kind of makes it a little confusing, but it's okay. We'll go through this. So the first thing I'm going to do is, and we'll call this get range in Excel. Column number equals columns.count, right? So this will be 5. 5. And then end column is a string that I'll just initialize. And then we'll do a while loop. While call number is greater than 0, keep going. And every time it starts, you do a -1. We'll do an end column equals, just trust me on this, 65. Call num 26. Call num math floor call num divided by 26. End row equals rows list dot count. Table range equals A1 to, this is just because I'm just always going to have it start at A1. End column, which will be whatever we just calculated all this for. End row. So this will be that 24 I told you about. Now, what is this? Essentially, if it's up to 26 characters, I mean, it would have been easier because it's like we can just do char A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, whatever, right? And then we'll have it end as Z. But there's a chance that your columns go beyond this. Rare, but it's a chance, right? Usually the kind of data we collect are longer this way rather than this way, but in case they are, and they go to AA, AB, and then if you just keep scrolling, right, it goes to BB, and then once you're past the 2 chart, it becomes 3 chart, right, like AAA, AAB, AAC, and then on it keeps going as columns. I need to account for that when I am making my range. So all of this is just for that. And basically, it's just going to make it so that the end column could be like a Z, but if it's beyond that, it could be AA. If it's really long, it could be AAA or AAC or whatever, right? So, but this is obviously a simple one. So if I run this and I go to tableau range, yeah, like this is what we're getting back. So the first thing we're going to do is when you make a table, generally speaking, you have the data and then you do format as table, right? Or you do format as table and then you kind of just add to it. Either way, one happens before the other. In our code's case, so what we're going to do is we're going to put the data in first and then we're going to convert it to a table. So if you're in Google, say add data to Excel using range. Should say graph API. Lots of ways to add data, by the way. I'm just showing you one way. We can spend hours just going through it endlessly. But here's what I'm using, which is range. And all I'm providing it is the value as our 2D array. And you can see here, it tells you what kind of data you could add, right? You could add string, number, or Boolean. So it's patch. We're actually going to do this one, address. We provide it where it starts and where it ends, kind of thing. So with that, our new worksheet, let's use that as a URI, as part of our URI. We reference resources that we created. We do range, and then we do address equals, colon. What do we add in here? We actually add this. From A1 to E24, we're going to do whatever is in the body. So this will actually overwrite data too if you ever need to, by the way. So values equals rows list. Now, because rows list, if I do convert to JSON, is already an array of arrays, we don't need to put that comma stuff and do all that. We can just do this. Values equals rows list, and it's already set in the correct format. We'll just do convert to JSON, depth of 10, and then our response equals patch, and invoke REST method patch with our body and all that stuff. All goes well, and I didn't make a mistake. Should be able to run all of this without errors. Okay, I didn't make a mistake, but my token expired. Run all of this and set a new header. Done. And now let's run all of this. Okay. So that's our data. Look at that. It showed up, right? But it is not an object. It's not a table right now. It's just raw data. Let's convert it to a table. So to create a table is add. It's a post where we're just saying table add, and in the body we're providing address. Unfortunately, if you make a table, you name it after. You don't do it the same go, is what it's saying, which is fine, whatever. So our URI to add a table, and then in our body, we're going to do address equals. And what do we add here? We actually add the table range. We're saying whatever is in these rows and columns, we're going to convert it into this table that I have here. And then you saw in the other one, it says has headers. This is a Boolean. So we're saying the first row is going to become our column headers. So has headers equals true. A1, B1, C1, etc. Same thing. We're going to convert to JSON, depth of whatever. Who cares? I don't think it needs it. And then table equals invoke REST method as a post. And I'm actually going to save this as previous table equals table.name because we're going to change the name. Let's run this and see what happens. Please make sure this is open. You can see it instantly. There you go. It made it into a table. Again, I'm not going to expand this. I'm going to make automation expand it, so we won't touch it. But now it's a table, and it's called table 1. But we want to change that name, and that's why I have it stored here as a variable. So table 1 is stored as previous table. Next is rename table. It's a patch to the same table that we created. So we're going to file table, and then we're patching in the new name. We do that. It changes it. We come to the table, hit thing, new resources. Okay? That's how easy it is to create the table name. Now let's do more fun stuff. Why don't we do some formatting, styling? I'm going to type all of them here so we can see the final magic happen automatically. So we won't go back and forth with each of these. A while back, we did a get against this exact. Now, technically, I could have just added it here. I don't know why I didn't just do that, but let's say table style. It is the exact same as what's here. But now that I have a new table name, I don't need to mention previous table name. And the body is actually something called style. Let me do a get against this first. Maybe not do out null. Table style medium 2. So in here, this is what it is. Maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want another one. So if I go to format as table, and let's say I want to do this, light 12 is what I want. So let's call it that. 12, and make this into light. And that will change the table style. I'll leave that as is. Now let's look at something else for this exact same table. I'll do a get again, just so we can see it. If I run these, which is table row range format font. And again, you can always Google it, right? Change font, blah, 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 blah. And in here, you'll see a couple things. First, I was looking for a particular column or row, which is the header row. So all the column names. And you can see the sizes, right? Like the name of the font, etc. And the color as well. And it's in RGB. Why don't we change all that? So the URI should be the same. And we'll do body equals like that. Size equals, make it bigger, 14. And then color equals 0. Yeah, I was waiting for this to show up. Funny enough, I actually like it black. It's going to turn it to a different color. And this is going to be a patch. So do invoke rest method, do an out null, or store as a response, whatever. And then maybe you want to do auto fits, right? So if you had your table selected, you can actually do format, auto fit row height, auto fit column width, right? It will just expand everything so all the words fit in the cells of the table. Again, if you're Googling it, AutoFit Excel Graph API. So if you wanted to auto-fit the columns and the rows, you can do these posts. There's no request body either, so that's pretty straightforward. For range format auto-fit columns. And then rows is range fit auto-fit rows. Okay, I'm just going to paste these because they're pretty straightforward. No need to explain. I'm going to go through each and then I'm going to do that. A whole bunch of formatting stuff, right? From here to here. Let's run these and see what happens. Oh, I forgot this. Oops. Yeah, look at that. Isn't that pretty cool? You get to push and fit all the words, changing the font colors, and then increasing the height if it needs to be. Those multiple lines of data, it would have done that as well. Either way, let's move on. So this is how to create a table. Let's finally add to it. Maybe we'll do another subscription this time. And we'll do the same thing. I'm going to change this. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I am not going to add resource group here. So you may see name subscription. Over here, we had resource group name as well. So what I want to do is, just in case these are different than this list, maybe they're organized in a different, maybe subscription is not in C, it's in B kind of thing, right? So this time when we're adding data, I want to be a little bit more calculated, right? Because we're using PowerShell. Why are we not going to use more programming into it and compared to doing this, right? This is so simple. Like it doesn't really tell us which column is adding what to. So with resource group missing, if I run these two lines and then we look at rows to add, we're going to see name, subscription, location, resource ID. Obviously, this is different than what's here because we're missing a column. So we need to dynamically add these, but we can't do the same format as we did before because if this is the first item in a row and then this is the second, well here it's actually resource group, that's the second, right? So to account for that, let's build arrays of an array, 2D array, even if it's a single item. So if you wanted to append one item into this thing, you can also do that, but just you got to have an object is my personal rule. Again, you don't have to do it. It's just how I like to do things. So this is all the data we have. We also need to make sure we collect the data from the table itself, at least the column, right? There's an API to just get the columns. So it's a URI, table name, header row range. And the columns equals, let me run these two and then we'll see what shows up. Headers, oh no, columns. It gives us a whole bunch of data, but what we really want is values. And believe it or not, we want 0. I don't know why. Values 0. So this is how we'll get the columns that are in Excel itself. And now let's build our 2D array. So the same thing, rows equals an object. And then what we'll do with that is we'll go through for each object in rows to add, because that's what I ended up calling it. I call the objects, but whatever. We'll do cells, and we'll make it also into an object. It's going to be an array, but it's just I'd rather use list than append with plus equals. For each column in columns, so we're going to go through all the columns that are already in the worksheet, and this is where we're going to add if data exists, and if it doesn't, we'll give it a null value. Props equals object.ps custom. Essentially, it's just a lookup to see, does this column that exists in the workbook exist in getAZ resource select object that we did? That's all. Like if I search this with name, shows up. If prop cells.add prop.value. So if property does exist, in the cell, we're going to add the property.value. That's it. Else, if it doesn't exist, we're going to do cells.add. We're still going to add, because this Excel can't really give it a null. So what we'll do is give it an empty string. Rows.add cell. So if everything's typed correct, we should get something in rows. We did. And you can see each one has like this gap. That is where resource group sits. Right, so it's name, resource group, subscription, location, resource ID. That's the data it's going to push in. And the rest is pretty straightforward. It's the same as what we've done before with the rows add URI to add stuff. And just like I mentioned with our last run, because this is already a 2D array, we don't need to mention it here with any commas before the rows. And then we'll run the API. And look at that. Everything got added, right? These are all empty. This is actually from name. And just like last time, we may need to do AutoFit because now we have names that are extremely long. Like this is pretty long, right? We need to fit that in. So we'll take these exact same ones, these, and we'll run them again as well. And just like that, that's Excel, right? We can create a file, we can make a table, we can add data to it, we can modify its different fonts and formats, we can auto-fit stuff, we can append stuff, we can delete stuff, you can modify particular cells if you wanted to. You could make charts, you could do formulas, right? I'm not going to just keep going down it because I think this is enough of a baseline for you to get started, right? So with what you have experienced and seen here, take this to the next level and start exploring other things. Like I personally don't have a reason to make charts or formulas really. So I don't really care, right? I'm either generating a report. That means I'm just doing one big dump into a table, right? There's no appending. And then I'm just sending that data off to someone. Hey, here's the data you requested. The second is I have like a log stream, kind of like I'm appending to a log, right? Where it's like anytime some action takes place in Azure, M365, etc., it logs it to here. Even like Azure DevOps in a pipeline run, put it here kind of thing, right? And then the last thing is reading data. So maybe I'm using this as part of my automation. Like a file gets created, and then the data that's in that file is what my automations are going to use to do whatever task they're going to do. And like all this stuff, right? Maybe you don't want to add this to your code. When you don't want to add stuff to your code, what do? You make functions. Like these are great candidates to make into functions. So you basically just run your functions with the simplest amount of instructions passed in as parameters, and it will do all this 2D array stuff for you, and you never have to see it in your code. That's what we do at our org. When we have Excels we need to build and modify, append, etc. too, we just call our functions, and in the parameters we provide the data, and all the formulas in the function itself, we don't even need to look at it. Like I haven't done this in so long because I'm just using the functions, right? So just do that, and then you can just keep building onto it to do all these different kinds of things and make your life easier and not have to deal with this. Either way, I hope this is insightful. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.